Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S MindLab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Ever wonder about the hidden machinery in your brain when you make a decision, especially when that decision involves picking a color or a number on a scale? Today, we're diving deep into a fascinating new tool that helps us peek inside that decision-making process. This paper introduces something called JEAM, a really cool Python package that lets scientists build and test models of how we make continuous judgments. Think about judging the ripeness of a fruit or estimating the distance to an object. These aren't simple yes or no answers, are they? They involve a continuous scale. For a long time, scientists have used what are called diffusion decision models to understand these kinds of judgments. These models see decision-making as a process where your brain gathers evidence over time until it reaches a certain threshold, and then you make your decision. The problem has been that modeling these continuous judgments is really complex. Existing tools for simpler decisions don't quite cut it, and building new models from scratch is a huge amount of work. This is where JEAM comes in. It makes it much easier for researchers to investigate the cognitive processes behind these continuous judgments. So what exactly are these multidimensional diffusion decision models, or MD-DDMs? Imagine your brain is like a little detective accumulating clues. In simple decisions like picking between option A and option B, the detective has two main paths to follow. But for continuous judgments like estimating a quantity or picking a color on a wheel, the detective has to navigate a much more complex space. MD-DDMs allow scientists to model this evidence accumulation process in multidimensional spaces. The authors explain that JEAM supports different kinds of response scales you might see in experiments, whether it's a circular scale like a color wheel, a bounded scale like a slider, or even a two-dimensional plane. JEAM can handle it. This is a massive step forward because it broadens the types of tasks researchers can model. One of the most exciting parts is that JEAM can model time-varying decision thresholds. This means the model can capture how the urgency to make a decision might change during a single trial. Think about it. Sometimes you might feel pressured to answer quickly, other times you might have more time to deliberate. This feature really adds a layer of sophistication to the models. Now, to the technical magic behind JEAM, they've built it using Python, and crucially, they've used a tool called Numba. This basically speeds up the calculations. Why is this important? Because estimating these models involves a lot of number crunching. Faster computation means researchers can run more complex models, test more hypotheses, and get results quicker. They are also ensuring the models are numerically stable, which means the answers are reliable. How do you get your hands on JEAM? Well, if you're a researcher, you can install it using pip, the standard Python package manager. They provide clear instructions for installation and even suggest using Conda for creating separate environments, which is good practice to avoid software conflicts. The paper then walks through the typical workflow of using JEAM. First, you import the necessary libraries. Then you create an instance of the model you want to use, like the circular diffusion model or CDM. You can specify if the decision threshold is fixed or changing over time. Once you have your model, you can do two main things: simulate data or estimate parameters from real data. The simulate method lets you generate synthetic data based on specific parameter values. This is super useful for testing your models and understanding how they work. To fit the model to actual data, you define a negative log likelihood function. This function takes the model parameters and the observed data and calculates how well the model fits. Then you use an optimization algorithm to find the parameter values that minimize this negative log likelihood, meaning the best possible fit. The paper walks you through this process for a basic CDM using a simulated dataset. It shows how to extract parameters like the decision threshold, non-decision time, and the drift vector, which represents the speed and direction of evidence accumulation. After fitting, they show how to calculate model comparison metrics like AAC and BIC, which help you decide if a more complex model is truly better than a simpler one. This is all standard procedure in cognitive modeling, but JEAM streamlines the implementation. The paper then dives into 4 really insightful use cases demonstrating JEAM's power. The first one is about modeling experimental designs. Imagine a study where participants have to judge orientation of a stimulus and the difficulty of the task varies. They show how you can build a model where parameters like the decision threshold or drift rate change depending on these experimental conditions. This is crucial for understanding how task demands affect underlying cognitive processes. For example, they showed how to model a speed versus accuracy emphasis, which directly influences the decision threshold. Next up is modeling mixture processes. This is super important for explaining complex response patterns, especially in areas like visual working memory. Often our decisions aren't from just one underlying process, but a combination. They demonstrate how to build a model with two components, one for accurate memory recall and another for guessing. This is key to understanding phenomena like the heavy tails or multiple peaks you sometimes see in response data. It's like saying sometimes you really know the answer, other times you are basically just guessing. The third use case explores custom mapping functions. This is where theory meets computation. Researchers can define how stimulus properties translate into model parameters. For instance, in a pricing task, they show how the subjective utility of a lottery can influence the drift angle of evidence accumulation. This is incredibly powerful for building integrated theories that link sensory input and cognitive processing directly to decision-making. It's about understanding how external factors shape our internal evidence gathering. Finally, the fourth use case looks at joint modeling. This is about combining different types of data, like behavioral responses and neural signals. They present a model where brain activity measurements might inform the non-decision time parameter in a diffusion model. This is a huge step for cognitive neuroscience, allowing a more direct link between brain function and decision processes. It means we can get more reliable parameter estimates by using multiple sources of information. The paper wraps up by summarizing the impact of JEAM. It is a flexible, powerful, and efficient tool for modeling continuous judgments. It addresses a critical gap in computational psychology by making advanced MD-DDMs more accessible. The authors highlight its support for various response scales time, varying thresholds mixture models, and joint modeling. They also discuss future directions, including the potential to incorporate time-varying drift rates, which could capture even more complex temporal dynamics in information processing. This could involve simulation-based methods or solving partial differential equations. So what does all this mean for us? JEAM is a significant development in the field of cognitive modeling. It allows researchers to ask and answer increasingly sophisticated questions about how our brains make decisions, particularly those that aren't simple yes or no choices. It provides a window into the continuous flow of evidence and the subtle dynamics of decision urgency. For me, this research highlights how much we are still learning about the intricacies of our minds. Tools like JEAM are essential for this exploration, helping us move from simple models of behavior to more nuanced and biologically plausible explanations. It means we can better understand everything from everyday choices to complex decision-making in clinical or economic contexts. The ability to model time-varying thresholds, for example, could help us understand why we sometimes rush decisions or why our accuracy changes over time in a task. Mixture models can explain why sometimes we make errors that seem completely random. And joint modeling opens up exciting avenues for linking brain activity directly to these cognitive processes. Of course, every study has limitations. As they mention in the future development sections, there is still work to be done in fully capturing time, varying drift rates, and developing even more efficient computational methods. But the foundation laid by JEAM is incredibly strong. This kind of research is what helps us build a more complete picture of human cognition. It shows us that thinking and deciding are not always simple linear processes, but often dynamic, evolving journeys of accumulating evidence. So that is a look at JEAM and how it is empowering researchers to unlock the secrets of continuous judgment. What do you think about these models? Do you have any examples of when you felt your decision-making urgency change within a task? Let me know in the comments below. If you found this breakdown helpful, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to RUBIN'S MindLab for more explorations into the fascinating world of psychology and neuroscience. And as always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.